Well, welcome to the Coding with AI podcast, where we have conversations with humans who build apps with AI. I'm Marcelo Lewin, your host and the founder of iCodeWithAI. If you want to get a hold of me, just email me Marcelo at icodewith.ai. Now, in today's episode, I'm chatting with a good old friend. He's been around for a while, doing a lot of stuff. He's a developer experience lead at Contentstack. His name is Tim Benniks. And today we're going to be chatting all about vibe coding from a developer's point of view. So there's going to be a lot of opinions and a lot of stuff happening. So stay tuned for that. But before we get started, you know how this works. Just go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that bell icon to get notified when a new episode is out. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button. If you didn't, send me an email and tell me why. And without further ado, let's bring in my good friend, Tim. How are you?
Hello, I'm
Glad.
all good. So nice to be here.
It's so nice to have you back. And I say back because most people don't know, well, at least people following here don't know my history with Headless Creator, which was another company I created many years ago. And I ended up getting acquired by the company that you used to work for, Uniform,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. And then we worked together a lot, and we were on the podcast there and blah, 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 blah. But enough about that. Let's talk about
The
you.
world has changed since then. It's all about AI now.
A lot has changed. Let's talk about you. Tell me about yourself. Tell everybody about yourself.
All right. So my name is Tim Benniks, and as you can hear, my accent is different that one from Marcelo because I'm actually from Amsterdam, but I live in France and I work with Americans. There's lots of cheese jokes to be made here, but we won't. It's all good. So I work at Contentstack, where I'm in charge of our developer experience. And so that means working with all kind of developer tooling, with how people onboard, how they get started, examples, things, docs, lots of stuff, but also a ton of AI upcoming. And so I'd love to talk about that a little bit later if we can. And so about my history, I come from agency. So I've worked at ad agencies and more implementation type spaces where for the last probably 20 years, I had the luck to work for the world's biggest brands, basically, from being a junior front-end developer to being a tech lead to being like just under a CTO with a team of like 1,000 developers. Like I've been across the board. And so now I work at product, which is a very different style, but very exciting. And so let's keep it at that and see some other things might pop through.
And for
But
those that see all
Marcelo,
the guitar stuff, he's a killer guitar player too. But
oh,
we'll
thanks
keep
for
that
saying
for
that.
another time. We'll invite
You
you and
don't
do
see
a
that
live
much now.
concert
But
with
thank
you.
you. Oh,
What's that? You can
I,
point. There you go. Yeah.
oh, there we go. You have some guitars here.
Yeah. There you go.
Um, so I have a conference talk where I play guitar on stage
Yep.
using web technology. Oh, there's so much,
Exactly.
but that's not for today.
No, we'll do it for another time. We'll do a live concert one day. We'll do it right here on
Oh,
stream.
good.
So anyway, all right. So let's get started. By the way, I have literally I think 70 questions. So Tim has been gracious to go and do a two-parter. So this is part one. We don't know when part two will come. I'm going to send out an announcement once Tim and I figure out good dates and times to do a two-parter.
Yep.
But let's start with defining vibe coding. From your point of view, I want you to define, what does vibe coding mean to you as a developer?
You sent me this question, right? And this was hard because I realized there's not one way of vibe coding. There's actually a ton of them, right? And so maybe we can work on this together a little bit. So essentially, when I see personally, I use it three ways. So the first one is I'm in a code base and I kind of just ask my agent, hey, this kind of doesn't work. Like I have a TypeScript error or whatever. Can you just fix it? And it does it in line, right? And so then the second way I use it is, okay, so I need an algorithm to place these images in a square box and only make them fit exactly to the box's specific X and Y coordinates, and then don't make them crossover. There's a bunch of algorithm to do there. That's another part. So that's slightly bigger. But then also, which is a little bit closer to what Marcelo likes to do, is like just build me a prototype and run and do the whole thing. And the quality thing comes later. I just want to see something on the screen. And so you have those three, right? So how would you define it in that case? Like I don't know. How do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the vibe coding has is changing quite a bit from the beginning, which was, it was the ability just to let AI, you just tell it what you want and let AI do its thing. I
Yeah.
think that's going to be gone, right? That's great if you're just playing around, not if you want to do anything real in production.
Hmm.
But I think, yeah, allowing AI to help you along the various paths that you want to go. You mentioned a couple, right? But code
Yeah.
refactoring, doing testing, um, migrating from a really old technology to, let's say, I mean, I've heard of people using vibe coding techniques to go from COBOL base code to, a .NET base code, right? They want to
Exactly.
modernize base codes. So there's different paths that I think you can take for vibe coding, but at the end of the day, to me, what it means to me, right? For every, I'm going to get people that disagree completely, but
Yeah.
it's
Sure.
really it's a mixture of creativity with structured SDLC put together to accomplish something, that the ultimate output is code. I just don't think with vibe coding, code is the central thing. Vibe coding, code is the artifact that comes out of the spec, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
it's
But
like we
we
can
can
no
all.
longer like what you just described was just a developer because all the things you just mentioned was what we used to do or still do as developers.
Oh yeah,
You're just being helped now, and the one lovely thing about this that developers can now no longer gatekeep this technology, right? Everybody can do it, and it's gonna change how people work. And I think it's not just developers that can 10x themselves suddenly. It's actually much wider ranging, where different disciplines, let's say a startup or different disciplines in any sort of business, can now overlap more. Like a product manager, shouldn't they just make a prototype rather than a whole thing written down? Hopefully, there's a designer that can help, and then you kind of create it together in one big thing. Like that's actually really hard to do. And so everybody is going to learn a little bit more, and this whole like magical coding thing is kind of like no longer gate kept that much. And so what I'm hoping to see is if somebody's going to pitch to a VC fund, I would love them to pitch the app rather than a slide deck.
right,
Like
right.
that's
I
those are
I
the
think
things
that
that are going to
prototype
change.
where you just click and go around and nothing happens is gone, right?
Oh, 100%. Like
Yeah,
a lot of those kind of companies that facilitate that are going to go out of business because it's now much more commoditized. And if that code that they're showing is good or not, we'll probably get into that a little bit later.
yeah, we are.
But maybe the artifact is the idea that person had rather than the artifact is the code. And I'm still at the generation where my artifact is the code.
Exactly.
But what about the youngsters when this is in 2 years, when we're like very close to an AGI type thing, where we're not AGI yet, but close?
Yeah.
Imagine, I don't think we care much about the code anymore. I think it's if you're a developer and you're listening to this, if you're old enough, remember how we used to make a fetch call to a server from the front end. We called it Ajax. And before that, it was called something I don't even remember. And this is actually starting to make the point. I used to write 20 lines of code to do one call. And then we got libraries like jQuery that made it called a
Right.
$.ajax. And it just had like one string. That's my URL. It just kind of works. And then it got better and it got better. And now the browser natively says fetch. And you just put a URL and some options. And I like people my age probably knows what happens under the hood, right? How the whole HTTP stack works and stuff. Most people don't care because the fetch call just worked because the browser optimized it away. So we can see the same thing happening with AI quickly, right? Where that artifact of knowing those 20 lines that I had to write to do this proper call with all like whatever handshake of HTTPS I needed, then just became a one liner. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
cares anymore what was inside. When we extrapolate that over 2 years, you see the inertia going, right? Where this is going, where your code base is now that. It just works. Like if you now have a young person on an iPad, they don't know there's a file system because it's abstracted away into a black
Right.
box and it just works. And like, this is hard for some developers because we live and breathe in this stuff. Like we love to write the best algorithms, but over time, an AI will write a better algorithm,
Exactly.
and then
Yeah.
it just is. and we don't have to actually be proud of that part anymore. So
So you're
it
talking
is
about things are getting abstracted more, right? There,
yes, for
we're
sure.
moving away further from the thing below, kind of like people that started with assembly language or even machine language, and then assembly,
Exactly
and
the
then
same story.
C, and then JavaScript, and but let's take a step back. And there
Sure.
are yesterday I went to the AWS summit in LA, and I ran into a lot of developers, and I could see many developers very averse to vibe coding. There when
Oh,
somebody spoke about I spoke about vibe coding, I like was asking questions, and I got some chuckles from people, meaning like, come on, really. But then from others, I got like they were up to it. They wanted to try it. They knew that it would help them out. So why do you think it's for some it feels very risky and no, it's very uncomfortable, and for others it kind of resonates with them? What's your take on that? And where do you fall?
I feel in the feeling liberated camp. And because this is a thing, and this is my opinion. I'm not here talking about all developers because we
Yeah,
all
yeah.
kind of are
I
quite
I did
different.
already tell people that we were going to do a lot of opinions today, so
Oh,
don't.
this is me. Like you're gonna get some spice and some salt here.
Yes, you are.
And so basically, developers who are quite accomplished and that have a bunch of experience and also grit, who know what it means to actually build a thing that a million people will use over the next year, that has certain business outcomes. The people that are looking at that outcome type thing, that are super pragmatic with experience, they will all love the vibe coding. Because as long as they can guarantee the quality that these million people that use their code it will work with, they will just push and say, let's just do more. Because if you kind of have the experience to know where to bring this thing, and you know you're outcome focused and you're pragmatic, sometimes a deadline is more important than a certain algorithm in a certain class. If you can actually just simplify it and still make your deadline so your customer is happy and will ask you again, you will do that. And so I fall into that camp because I've been working for in this kind of stuff for like 20 years. And so I felt the pain of wanting and being an idealistic developer and just pushing like the best thing. But that best thing was not the best for the person that asked you to write that code. And so people in that camp, and I put myself there, I feel kind of like, whoa, I just 100x'd my output. As long as I understand what the vibe coder is doing for me and I can really give it a plan, I will get a really good result. And so the people who don't like it, there's a whole bunch of different ones there, right? There are a ton of people who are in a job that deals with legacy all the time, which is normal. There's lots of jobs in like, a little bit like XSLT changing from Java to XML, things like that. You might not have the most fun, but it is job guaranteed, right? You will be able to do a job like that for the longest time. And so if vibe coding comes along and it's so good, it will immediately invalidate that job because this legacy code is also well known. So an AI might be even be better at it than you. And so that is a challenging one because we might have had the problems with these type of developers before vibe coding even came out. Well, would you be able to teach them React or Vue? Do they even want to? Right? I'm just giving some examples here, but
Yeah.
they might be like, oh boy, this is going to take my job, right? And they are very valid jobs to have. There's a ton of airports running on like the oldest servers. They
Yeah.
need to be kept up. Like this is an important job. And but there will be a moment where those will be taken first by the AI versus the higher level, more specific ones. But I'm not very like I'm
But I have I
finding
have
this
I
out
have
as
a
we
comment
speak,
on
right?
that. A
Sure.
comment on that real quick is I want to address that for those that are doing that. I don't want to scare
Because
them
it's
either,
not
because the
bad.
way
Like,
I think about it is, yes, you're right. They'll, because it's so, that technology is out there so much, and if it was trained properly on it, it could do it. But the human can still understand the entire integration of the entire system in the
oh,
entire
totally,
enterprise, and the AI
totally.
won't. At least now, the AI won't do that. So, don't you think that for them, it would be like a very helpful tool that could make them more productive,
Oh,
help them speed
100%.
up, and not take away their job?
Like if you learn how to really prompt this AI in your very complicated context of that legacy stack, you will be that 10x developer.
Right.
So, but there are just different people in how they figure out how they feel. Like developers are kind of a complicated bunch. I am one of those where I would be fuming at my screen because somebody made some decision that now made my code different. And I don't know why, and I just get annoyed. And sometimes developers just have this. This is their drive to be the best, to do great stuff. And if you're in this legacy system, that is a harder thing because you have almost never chosen yourself how you wanted to build that,
Yeah.
right? It's always some external factor or something that was purchased before your time or whatever. And so you kind of have to have the mastery, the purpose, and kind of like the ability to choose for yourself. If these three things are 100% good, like your autonomy, that's what I meant. If you have all
Mm-hmm.
those three, you don't have any problems. AI will help you. You will be very happy.
Yeah.
But if less of like one of those is less, you have this challenge already. And so sometimes when you're as a developer in that moment, I've been there myself, you can just get annoyed. And then you try a prompt and it kind of didn't work. And you're like, that's a developer thing
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Totally.
when we help people like that to like through iCode with AI, for example, to learn how to prompt better, how would you talk to a junior developer that sits next to you if you want them to do something? The moment you start to get it, it will 10x you immediately.
Right.
And so that's actually the next point I wanted to make. If you don't really know yet how to talk to an AI to make it do the thing you want, you will also be frustrated. And I was that for a while. Only just recently it started to work. And it's really hard to actually talk to it in the voice that you think works. And I personally found that if I speak to an AI the way I would talk to my teams when we would build features, that starts to work really well because you want to kind of like you want it to be bottom up, right? I want developers to make their own decisions, be responsible for what happens, but you guide them in the right direction. And you do that with specs, you do that with discussions, you do that with showing how I would code it, how would you do it, we find a way together, all that stuff. And I noticed when I work with an LLM agent that way, with good specs, with good explanations, in my prompts I even write how I would speak to a junior developer, it starts to work pretty well. And the interesting thing is, this might be a junior developer, but it's also an agent. So it has an IQ of like uncountable amount of numbers. Right? It's a really high IQ and the work ethic is ridiculous. And this doesn't mean we're going to not have junior developers, let's be honest, but it's a very interesting thing that changes our game completely. If we have an army of agents that work, that we have taught how to do something really well, if you have that point, but like that actually is the thing that makes you more senior as a developer, anyways. The whole soft skill area makes you more senior as a developer. If you have understanding of the overview of your application, but also the overview of what your customer wants or what your boss wants,
Mm-hmm.
that works in the whole, but it also works when you fix a bug, right? There's these really interesting things where if there is a bug in the system, what do you do to figure out what that bug is? You can just dive in and then hope you find it based on some guess you have. Or what you can do is take all the layers on top. You take them slowly away until you figure out this is exactly where the bug is. And then you start to add layers back and to see, okay, this is where it goes wrong. So in this layer, I kind of have to figure out to fix something. That only shows that you have overview. So overview of your code base can be on the minimum level of a bug, but also on the macro level about choosing a certain external service, yes or no. And then you can, if you know all the stuff, you can argue with your boss to say yes or no to something, for example. If you just say no because I don't want it, that's much harder than if you really understand it and actually make a point. And I'm saying all these things because I start to sound like old Uncle Tim here. But if you do that and talk to your AI that way, you will see how much better it gets. The more you know about it, the more context you give it about what you want to see, the better it gets. And so you'll see that more senior developers right now that let's say are already really good, they will see an incredible increase in how good they get.
Well, and I would argue that because I've been doing a lot of context engineering, which is basically
Mm,
the way you talk to, it's not just prompting, right? But it's the way you craft the entire workflow for AI to
exactly.
follow, right? And I would argue that the better you get at that, the better you will get at communicating even with humans in
Oh yeah.
your in right. I hear a little echo, just Tim. I don't know if it was pulling out there.
Oh. I apologize.
It's fine, no worries. We're good now. But yeah, I would argue that you would get much better at communicating with humans and within your own team, because you start realizing that when you tell AI something and you miss some of the details, it'll start just putting their own thoughts into it, and that's
Yep.
not really what you wanted. So that teaches you, oh, I need to be more detailed. I need to give a bit more guidance, right? Also, if you do it right, I just wrote a whole blog article on outcome context engineering, which is outcome based, right? So instead of telling, a lot of people focus on telling the AI or even humans how to do something, instead of saying, this is the outcome I want, here's some
Mm.
guidance. Now you go do what you're good at, right? So those are a couple of comments that I wanted to say based on what you were saying. The other thing is on junior developers. I don't believe developers are going to go away. I think junior developers that don't know how to use AI are going to go away. I think you're going to be
100%.
expected to know how to use AI. You may be doing some junior context engineering, junior level context engineering to set it up for the senior developer. But I think you're still going to have the senior and junior developer, but you're going to be expected to know a lot more from the AI perspective, and how do you manage and control AI basically.
But what's interesting here? Like when you look at, for example, my generation, we are a little bit on the older end of the developers. Like I've been doing this for a long time. So what that means is, as a more senior developer, you're also more senior in your ways. And it also might mean that you kind of expect something always to happen, and that's the way you work. So you're kind of not really thinking a lot out of the box anymore. And so in our teams at Contentstack, we're now asking them, okay, so you join, you now build me a full digital experience project. Make us like a really cool project, right? Just go. But they're youngsters, right? So they think outside of the box and they kind of just talk like a human to an AI, and really good stuff comes out. Like they all use cursor. And when I see what comes out, it's like, how did you do that? It's like I just talked to it. And so I have this preconceived notion sometimes of how I want something to work, and that's because it's harder for an older generation to think outside of the box. That is so different because sometimes these HTML standards or whatever crazy thing of how you make a responsive interface might actually be kind of like not freeing enough for a youngster and an agent, because they might want to put everything on a position absolute and just refresh the page when you resize. Whatever I'm saying here, anything goes.
I
And
have a comment on that
we need-
because I have a perfect example of what you just said.
okay.
Because I'm an old school developer as well. I haven't been developing for many years, but I started my career
Mm,
as a developer. And the Cody framework that I created, when I first
yep,
created it, I was using a lot of like if then, even though written in English, but if then do this, and there was a lot of
yeah,
JSON calls and a lot of like go here, go there. And then I had a person that looked at it and go like, but you can do a lot of this stuff just in plain old markdown files, just
yep,
talking to the AI. And it completely flipped my entire thought process into like, stop thinking like, this logical developer path and start thinking more like, how do you talk to the AI in a way to get things out of it, right? And I went from that pure, almost code, like everything is written like code, to no, you gotta think of it in logical English, right?
exactly.
And then I went from, well, let me be prescriptive and tell it exactly, do these, ask these 5 questions, to I was challenged again. And it was like, well, why are you telling it what to do? Why don't you just tell it what you want the outcome to be and have it do what it's supposed to do, which is, be a non-deterministic and figure out the best way to get that outcome. So it really is a paradigm shift in thinking, for developers, even for just everybody, right? I mean, what's your thought on
Yep.
that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I was in this pretty close to this AI space for a while already, like a few years, and so I've done like avatars that look like me or sound like me, all those kind of things, right? But never really like a coding agent. And I was a little late to that game, I think, and I didn't realize how much you can just tell an agent in these instructions, and it will just do it like really well. Like that was my moment of like when I tried that at work actually, that changed so much what I thought this could be. Like the ceiling of possibility like exploded. And so at Contentstack now, we released something called Agent OS. It's not in general availability yet, but it's close. And there we have orchestrator agents and sub agents, and most of the stuff that we do is just giving it instructions and context to learn about your CMS or all the things that we have in Contentstack. And then last week on stage in London, we gave a demo, and I just asked the agent, okay, look at all the analytics data you have from our CDP and look at all our pages that we have. What is the best opportunity this week based on that data where I should make a page because most people might want to go there, but there's no page yet? And it's a non-deterministic interface, right? I just typed that in. It found it immediately, told me the numbers, and said, you have to make a page about this and that. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to ask it, make me a page about this and that. And then it did. And it was flawless. And that's because it had all the context and stuff. And that was so incredible to see. Even that, I was so deep into it. And then even last week when that happened on stage, and then you step back and you think, that made a page just as good as I would do it in 2 minutes and not 2 hours. And it found the right image assets, it has the right tone of voice. And of course, Contentstack is a very mature company. We have all these amazing AI tooling things going on. This is not me pitching my job, but I just came up, right? And the interesting thing is that I didn't even realize how strong these agents were until I saw that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes you just need these mind shifts. And now I like when I go open cursor and I talk to the agent to build me something, I just talk to it like a human.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
talk to it
It's
like, oh,
a
remember
totally
what we were
different.
coding yesterday? Like I'm talking like that, like to a
Right.
real person.
That's the new
Yeah.
coding language, right? English in conversation. But all right, let's Tim, it's let's see. It's 27 minutes and I got through three questions. So I think this is going to
Oh
be a
no.
10-parter. This is going to
Here
be
we
not
go.
a two-parter, but a 10-parter.
Okay, we're gonna go faster now.
So,
You go.
let's talk no, that's okay. That's okay. Let's talk about vibe coders, not
Hmm.
developers. Do you feel that that's a new breed? Because that's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on not so much the developers. When I say by focused is with my Cody
Hmm.
framework, with my website, is trying to help vibe coders. And what I consider vibe coders are going to be everybody except a full-blown developer. So a product manager, a
Okay.
product marketing manager, a marketing professional, a project manager, all these people that will want to do prototypes, will want to do POCs, will want to create tools to speed up their process, so on and so forth. Do you think what's your take on that being the new, because that's I'm putting all my eggs on that these are the new it's a new breed of of builders, not replacing developers, just a
Good.
new
I
kind
agree.
of builder. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
it's like this whole gatekeeping of us as the developers can say no to somebody. Like remember that time where your development team would just do a marketing just say no?
Right.
And then it was no. And now the marketing team says, well, I know how to vibe code. I'm just going to build this page now. And they probably do it better and faster. And that is a new thing there for sure. And for example, one really interesting one is like, I never in my life want to write bash scripts. It's hard. It's annoying. I can just write a bash script now by asking an AI, right? And that
Exactly.
changed the game completely. And so, if there are people who stand up and really understand this stuff, that's a new breed of developer. And they might be a little bit annoying to the existing crowd for a while, but at one point it will just separate out. Because this is the one thing. Do you want a vibe coded app to be used by a million users next month and then see what happens? You don't know, like we're not there yet, but I'm saying the word yet because in a year we will be there, but just not yet. And so there will still be this segregation a little bit, but it just accelerates everything. That's the main thing.
Well, that brings up the question of you don't want to do an app for a million people. So
Well, maybe you do, by the way,
no,
if
no, no,
you're
no. But I
to
agree
do it.
with you. I agree with you that right now, people ask me all the time, should I vibe code? And I always give them a list
Always, please
of
can you just say yes? Just always
yeah,
say yes.
yeah. No, I go, it depends because it depends on the amount of risks, the audience size, the risks, the risk impact, right, of those risks. What is the impact of those risks? The higher you go up the chain, in risks, in audience size, in the impact of that risk, You want to make sure, I mean, you may still vibe code, but I always recommend human in the loop. And if you're just coding with a human, you put multiple humans in the loop as your
Yeah.
risk goes up, right? Of the
But we
possibility.
always put people in the loop for anything in production because we need to do a pull request with a reviewer, right?
Right.
And so, for example, the other day, I'm at my current job. I'm not actually coding production code. I'm not going opening up our CLI and then coding production code because we have a crew of incredible developers who do that. But then at one point, I needed this feature for something I wanted to do for my job. And then I just actually went into this highly controlled environment of our CLI in the code base. And I coded a little bit myself. I learned the code base and then I piped that feature. And then I piped the unit test and the integration test and all the security things. And then I gave it to my team to say, hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm a product manager, but I just coded something. I do apologize. And it actually is in a production build right now and it works. So it also depends on what type of vibe coding you do for this production stuff. If it's something in a highly controlled environment and your vibe literally follows the rules that are exactly set up by that environment, please do it because you're just going to be faster. And if you have a pull request that is checked by your security team and your colleagues and they all say yes, now they just had a feature I wanted now. They put it later in a sprint somewhere, but I needed it now, so I did. And then if you don't piss off each other, we're good to go. So it depends. This actually is going to, and this has like millions of calls, this SDK or this CLI.
Right.
So it can work. You just have to know the scope.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
maybe that's the word.
So question for you on, you said you vibe coded certain things, right? So let's talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that.
sure.
Exactly what do you mean by vibe coded, right? Because I think what you mean by vibe coded is very different than what a marketing person would have meant by I vibe
100%
coded
agree.
this. And then I also want you to address, when would you not vibe code something? Like where you're like hand coding the thing. When would you do that?
Okay.
So first,
So,
let's tackle when you said I've vibe coded this. Exactly what did you mean by that? Because
so
I think you probably looked at the code and reviewed it and did more than just let AI
100%.
do.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
in this context of the story I just told with our CLI, the release I made, in that I opened the code and the artifact that is the code is something I looked at, understood, and figured out. I now kind of know where everything lives and what I want to do. So this is vibe coding, not from going from scratch, just give me this feature. It actually is, I understood where everything lives, how do things work, how can do I actually figured out my own self, how do I in this mono repo just build this little part. So that means I actually learned. Then I figured out what I needed to do, but I just didn't want to do the doing. So once I figured out where everything's set, I just open up my chat window or my Claude Code or whatever, and I said, okay, can you please look at this code base and understand what it's doing on this certain part that I need to do something in? Once you know that, ask me a few questions that about what I want to build. And so I kind of just work with the agent to create exactly what it needs. So I always tell it, okay, just figure it out, ask me some questions, don't code yet, please, just come back to me. And then and this is looking a little bit like Cody, I know, Marcelo, but this is how I did it at that time. And so we didn't really make documentation or anything, but in the same context window, we kind of figured out exactly what to do. And then I said, okay, now you know my feature now, you know the thing I want to do, you know where everything lives. Now do it and also add unit tests. And that took all of about probably an hour. It wasn't that hard to do because I gave it all the context because I knew exactly where everything lived and how the code worked. I just didn't want to type it all. I didn't
Well,
want to make the if else things. And so this is vibe coding in context that's much smaller.
but I want to point out something. So, and I think this is where vibe coding is going, and that's why I think ultimately building apps is going to be focused more. Building production ready apps that scale are going to be more on the technical side with technical
Yes.
people always. I mean, not be full developers, but it's going to be technical people. But you did more than vibe coding. What the original vibe coding was, right? You gave it context. You had it do unit testing. I mean, you did pretty much the entire thought process, which is what I tell people all the time. You got to bring a systems thinking into vibe coding, and that's what you did, right? You went through the pro. You didn't just say, I want you to do this, go do it," and then
But
accepted it.
it wouldn't be successful because
Exactly.
it was, the prompt is too small and it would take too long to run, and it would come back with something, or and then it just breaks. I've had that too many times.
Right. And that's the reality of when people, that's why when people chuckle about, oh, vibe coding, that'll never take off. I go, it will take off, but it's a different vibe coding than what you think the original vibe coding is, letting AI do whatever it wants. Maybe we'll get to one point, like you said,
I think we
AGI.
will. To be honest, we
Maybe.
will.
Yeah.
With your, like, this is the thing, sorry to interrupt, but with your framework, you kind of structure, like, I'm not sure how much people know about Cody, but it's really interesting to structure the outcome you want, make like PRDs, make task lists and things like that. It does that for you. It's almost more for the human than it is for the AI. But once you know and figured it out, and then you give it to the AI, you can kind of let it run. Like, I've used your stuff to make like a landing page for something, and it worked pretty well. And
Cool.
I didn't give it too much of a context.
Well,
So
thank you.
there's also another, yeah, it's great. Like, this is one of those, my brain got melted again when I saw what you did with your, when it was called Vibe Doc still.
Right.
I didn't know this worked. I had no idea. And then my colleague Lo and I, we just learned about your project, and we put it in a meeting. We just put it in and started. And at the end of the meeting, we had a website,
It's
and it
crazy.
was actually good. And we didn't like how it looked. That's a point we're going to talk about in a sec. But that's pretty crazy that if you follow, it's essentially, if I was a tech lead and I would tell my team, this is how I want to work, you guys make all your subtasks and your tasks and your epics and your estimations go. If you do it that way, which essentially is what your Cody does, you will get a good outcome.
So when would you not vibe code? Like absolutely no vibe coding. No, I'm not going to
Uh,
do that. When would you
this is
not
a
do
little
that?
spicy, but anything, if you want something that's creative to look at, something with incredible typography, something that's unique and artsy. Let's say I want to build the homepage of my personal website, and I want it to have like a little animation and something fun and like really nice typography with really nice spacing, and I want to explain it like what I just did. I want you to give it some pop, like all the creative agencies would brief like that, right? And then a designer just goes in and tries. It will not be good at that. At least right now, it's really hard. And I've had some really good success with V0, but not really the way of the level I wanted it. I had some pretty good success with GPT-5 um, inside, I think it was inside Cursor as an agent. But anything creative that is actually relatively unique looking, luxuriously looking, things like that, honestly, I have not had success. And the interesting thing is that a company like Figma, for example, will also not go there, because that means their tooling is basically irrelevant. So there's not that many companies that make you design incredible things with AI. There's probably a few, but the big ones, they won't, because then their tooling is irrelevant instantly.
So
Right?
design is
How,
something that it still needs help on,
for
right? So,
me, how I wanted to look, like, if I wanted to build an app and I know
hmm,
very specifically how the app interface with a dashboard needs to look, perfect. Because it
yeah.
knows Tailwind, it knows Shatsy, and it knows all these really cool libraries, right? And so it will make something that looks like, honestly, most designs of websites, web pages that come out, not yours,
Hmm.
by the way, but most, will look like a Tailwind template, because
Hmm.
that's what it learned. And that's what most people want. But if I want to build my own website and I want it to be like some fancy animation or whatever, I'm going to code it myself.
Yeah.
But then
Okay.
the rest, I will vibe. Like
Now,
connecting to a CMS, I will vibe.
I was also hoping that you'd say I wouldn't vibe code. I wouldn't give it access to production stuff like database, Git
We are
repositories, my main
we are
repository.
learning about this now. For example, at work at Contentstack, we have this incredible MTP server, and we just had a question from one of our partners. Hey, you don't allow me to like create and delete content types? And I was like, oh, did we have a gap in this product? Turns out it was by design. We don't
Right.
want you to delete your content type, because maybe the agent will just, start, thinking a little bit more. It might be a more agentic agent, and it doesn't understand all the tools you have yet in your MCP server. It might actually decide, you know what, I'm just going to delete this content type and make a new one with an extra field, rather than just adding a field to the content type, right? Because they don't know yet.
Right.
We don't know yet how to make an MCP, so all different type of agents understand.
Yeah.
More agentic agents might think longer and figure it out, but might also then do stupid things like I want the last 5 blog post articles from this website. The MCP might say, I'm going to query all 3,000 and then filter in the front end and give you 5. Well, that's not what you want to do. And so we kind of need to figure out, what do we let it do and what do we not let it touch.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's a pretty interesting one still.
So, do you think that vibe coding is going to, well, I mean, we kind of know the answer to this, but introduce a new type of technical debt, or even a lot more technical debt?
A lot more.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, but
But
yes.
that's because, but wait a minute, question on that. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's just, I don't
No,
want it to
no, go,
slip.
go.
But do you think it's going to do that because it's being, vibe coding lower the barrier to entry and you have a lot less experienced people creating stuff that creates technical debt? Or do you think it's AI's not
Both.
able to, okay.
I think it's both. Like, it's that one, the first one for sure.
Yeah.
But I see it with myself. Like, I know code pretty well. So I know what's happening. So when I look at it, it's like, okay, you didn't do that right, let's fix it. But if it has gone right 5 out of the 6 times and you are so delighted with what this agent did for you, I actually have a vibed SaaS product that I will release soon. And now when I looked at the code yesterday, I looked at it and was like, oh boy, there's so much weird repetition in there. Why didn't I catch it? And I didn't catch it because, let's say, 90% of the time it was excellent. So I started believing, okay, this agent can do it all. And so there's actually a lot of technical debt in there that I would never have allowed when I coded it myself. And so even people who are quite experienced in building, they will start trusting it more, and you will see tech debt. And it's also just, agents are very verbose all the time. Like, they write like the longest, biggest piece of code, which I don't mind because it's quite testable, perhaps. So what I've started doing actually to make this tech debt less, but I don't know if I've solved it. So please, people listening, give us some comments to see what you know. After every feature I build, I have a task that I give it where I say, okay, can you look back at what we just did, or actually just look at the whole project? Are we still accessibility AA
Mm,
compliant? Right? Is the code still compliant for people who need assistance? Did you think about our performance budget? Did you think about how fast this thing runs on the internet or on processors or whatever? And then I have things like, can you look at overly complicated pieces of code and kind of clean them up? And every time I ask it to do that, it will find stuff that it built itself just before and say, oh, well, I feel that there's like probably 5 things we can solve here. And at one point, what I had, like, it made, like, I had this live chat component that I built that talks to OpenAI. Basically, similar. It looks a little bit similar to, like, basically ChatGPT, but with it's much smaller scope. But it made that like a React component of like 1,700 lines with all its features and stuff. And so it worked incredibly well. But that's not maintainable. Also, not for an agent, because it has to have all that stuff in its context to learn. So after that task, I just asked it, hey, can you just have a look? Can you make it more, like, what can you make more concise and less repeated or complex or whatever? And it always finds something. I'm, but I'm now trying out for myself to just not look at the code too much. So I'm asking it to clean up. It cleans up. Everything still passes. All the tests run. It's fine. I don't know if I have tech debt. I'm in this weird space right now where I don't want to see it, but I think I have tech debt still.
yeah.
So how
Yeah.
do you solve this? Or this is the thing. Maybe only I care about this tech debt. Maybe we don't care anymore because if it runs, right? So what do you
Well,
think about
but performance. You mentioned a lot of things that it does matter, right? Ultimately,
it? Mhm.
does it scale? Is it performant? Honestly, I probably have a lot of tech debt because I can't hand code anymore. So I mean, I kind of know when it's doing stuff. I know from a high level what it's doing. And as the more I vibe code, the more I learn. But at the end of the day, I am trusting AI to have done it properly. Now, I have that risk assessment checklist that I go through. If
Yes, you
something
do.
goes
You do.
wrong and the effect of that wrong isn't a big deal, I don't care. If the effect of that wrong is huge, for example, let's say, and I haven't done this, but let's say in my website I ask you to upload a very private, like your driver's license or some document, right? Well, I wouldn't just accept what AI gives me. I would involve a human and make sure that what's being done, it's done correctly, right? Just like if I had a human code that, I would involve a security expert to make sure that that human
Exactly.
did correctly. So, is there technical debt? I think so. But like you, the other thing I do is I do a lot of going back and doing cleanup every so often because things are
Okay.
so fast now, right? Because that's the thing with technical debt before was it always fell in the backlog, right? Because you have new
It, do-
features that you're working on.
it
So
doesn't
we'll
have
get
to. It doesn't have to be the case anymore because like
exactly
you're saying, I was in the airport traveling from London back home, and I had like 20 minutes, and I just asked my agent, "Can you just clean up some stuff?" And then I kept my laptop open and let it just run. And then I checked in, closed my laptop, opened it up after the plane landed, and it had fixed it. So tech debt is a thing as long as you, but it's not a problem if you keep fixing it.
exactly. And I think
Right?
we are going to have tech debt, but it'll be fixed. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No
It'll be
problem.
fixed much quicker and much more often than it was before because that fell always on the back burner because features always came first, right? New features, new versions you have to put out. So I think even though it may be creating more tech debt, possibly, I think that tech debt will be fixed much more often, and maybe even junior developers will jump in and do a
And
lot
solve
of
these
that
things.
cleanup, right?
I do think, though, there's two parts here to this. The tech that we're creating with the AI now is more
Mm-hmm.
low hanging fruit that a developer would never ever create, because it's just less
Mm,
clever in certain things based on context. And the
okay.
tech that you just mentioned is probably almost designed tech that with like a to-do tag that says fix this next year when we go to this third party or whatever, right? So this is
Right.
more almost designed tech that the tech that the AI will create is much more obvious, like why did you do this kind of thing.
Right. Right. That makes
And
sense.
so based with that in mind, I think the job of vibe coded cleanup specialist is going to be a pretty interesting job role.
It's
Like,
interesting. Yeah.
but it's only going to be people of my age and up who do that.
Why
Because
is
at one
that?
point, because at one point it gets so good we stop caring and it's just fine. We don't need
Mm,
to clean it up anymore. And then this whole generation of people that are coming up now that do all this stuff that think outside of the box a little bit more, right? All these
mm-hmm.
youngsters that I have at work that do incredible stuff with our tools, they don't need that to be fixed anymore. They're just the new generation. Like
Yeah.
I look, there's gray in our beards, dude. Like we are going to be one of those where we still knew how it was built when HTTP 1 was still there in XHTML. Do you care now? Not even a little bit. And
Right.
that whole process that is happening is just going to be extremely accelerated now.
Right.
And so for a while, we're going to need some vibe coding cleanup assistants or coders. Like I could actually now go freelance, go to San Francisco and fix everybody's, vibe
Vibe
coding.
coding stuff.
And I could probably have a pretty good job, but that's only going to
Probably.
last a year because it's going to get so good that there's no need for that anymore. Like,
Right.
I love how we keep talking about it because as it changes, we need to talk about these subjects.
Yeah.
But over time, it's like, remember when you did Headless Creator, we're all talking about composable and headless and all
Right.
these words, right? I don't think I've used those words for a while. Have you
Right.
still used the word Jamstack? I don't
Right.
think so.
Right.
And so
And
that went pretty fast.
yeah.
AI will even accelerate it.
It's even faster. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're pretty much at the end. I got tons more questions. Obviously, we're going to have a part two. I will announce it after I'll talk to Tim afterwards and we'll figure out what's a good day and time. But we'll announce a part two. And honestly, we could do a part three and four because there's so much to talk about here. Um, so, in closing, I guess maybe let me just close it by asking you spec driven development, which is the new form of development. Do you think developers will adopt that? Or do you think that's still going to be more focused on non developers, like, like we spoke about in product managers and all, everybody else that's going to be creating? But
Mhm.
do you think developers will be adopting spec driven development?
It kind of depends. I'm sorry to say it like that. For example, sometimes when you fully spec something out, you get really good stuff, but you're not fast to the delivery. Of course, AI can help you with that. But I notice now that I start with the specs. I kind of do spec driven, but I don't do like test driven because you can do that too with GitHub's latest like spec design for AI. But if you how do I say this? Like, I actually notice now that I build stuff based on the spec. It kind of works. And then at one point, I just want to branch off. I just want to do a few quick things because I saw something to clean up, or I want this extra feature, which is outside of the spec. And so traditionally, you had two camps, right? A quick startup that just hacked shit together. They did incredible work. They didn't need specs, but when they grow, they need them. Then
Right.
you have the bigger companies that always have the most stable releases, like at Contentstack, where we have lots of specs. We have PRDs, we have TRDs, we have tasks, we have epics. And that is also really great, but a little bit slower. So AI will make it faster, but it will bring both probably together. And so what I would love to see, and I'm not sure if we can do this with Cody, is where we follow the spec, we do it as we've written, we have learned what we want to build, but we need to be able to branch off
Experiment.
into,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to do experiment and do a tangent into some sort of coding thing, make a new branch and just create something. But then if we like it, we might move it back and put it in the spec of, hey, we did this. If I don't like it, I want to go back to the previous thing where we branched off and just continue with my spec. Like,
Well, it's
sorry, go
interesting
on.
you said that because I was talking a lot yesterday at the AWS Summit about that, and we were talking about subagents, and somebody
Oh
brought
yeah,
up a
sure.
really good concept of using subagents with their own environments to do a branch, right, of your main branch. Have it do experiment, have another subagent do a different experiment, and then seeing all these subagents and the outcomes,
Wow.
right? Based on that, and then picking the one that you say, oh yeah, 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 this is the one that I want, that's going to work, and then bringing that into your main branch or your dev branch or
That
whatever.
sounds very idealistic and a complete shit show for your Git repository. Because this is the thing. If that's a small thing
Yeah,
about, hey, I want to do this algorithm four ways,
yeah,
do you want to have four sub agents that you all have to give context and hopefully they understand it all four the same way? Make it super deterministic, right? The outcome is this and go. And then let it make four branches. And then you kind of have to hope that they all merge. That worries a lot.
oh yeah,
Like, the thing is though, in a year, that is probably super normal because these agents are so good. Right now, in my personal experience, please let's say it like this: my personal experience, they're not good enough to do that. They will go off on a tangent that's a bit too long, and I've had it many times with Claude code, for example, where it would make a bigger change and say, "Oh, this file seems corrupted. Let me just remove the whole file and retry again."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it would just kind of fall into that trap. What if all these four or five sub agents fall into a trap somewhere along
right,
the line, and you get start to look at it? They all like stopped or timed out, and you look at this, it's basically a mess.
yeah,
And so this might be my age speaking or my history with coding. I would keep it closer to the fast if I could.
yeah, and I
But
mean,
there will be
we'll
youngsters
see. I
out
mean,
there that, imagine this. There will be youngsters out there that use Supabase and make a startup in a weekend. This is what Supabase always says.
yeah,
It is actually very doable right now.
it is, and it's a beautiful time because there is
Like,
no the answer to the question, can we do this, is now yes, all the time.
oh, please, yes, always
Always,
go.
as always, you can go. There's no more no. I don't think we can do this. It's just how long is it going to take, and it's going to be pretty fast. Anyway, Tim, as always, we get together. We can chat for another couple more hours. It was a
You can.
pleasure having you here. If people want to get a hold of you, best way.
I think the easiest way is now find me on LinkedIn. Just find Tim Benniks or just Google. If people still Google, you can do that. Um,
Do they Google or
I
Chat GPT it now? I don't know.
I think we like I oh before we end, I tried to ask Google Gemini to do OSINT on me, and you know what it returned?
Uh huh.
Everything in the Q&A section of my website.
Really?
So it is actually indexing, which means if you ask any model about my name, you will find probably a link or something.
Oh well,
Let's probably do
you're all
that.
over. You're all over Google, and now Google you can
Exactly.
do AI. You can do in the Google search. There's
Where
do
I
it with.
live, not really, not yet.
Oh, with us, we have, search your typical search, and then there
Hmm.
is with AI, and when you do the AI is basically the chat
Oh,
with the full
interesting.
search.
I've yet
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
that here in France.
It works really well. I like it. Yeah, it works really well. And if you just used to Googling it.
I think next time we should talk about how MCPs changed the game. I
We're
think
going to be
that's a
talking
very
about a bunch of stuff. So, all right,
how about
Tim,
that?
thank you so
Super fun.
much. Get a hold of him on LinkedIn. You can see him on my site. But just do Tim Benniks and you'll get like a billion returns. Tim, thank you as always. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And thanks to the rest of you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did, and we're going to be having a part two, maybe a part three. I don't know. We'll ask him. I'll talk to him later. But no, seriously, I hope you enjoyed it. There's so much to talk about here. This vibe coding is just changing the entire paradigm. It's changing the entire world of the way things are created. So it's an amazing time. I always say this. It's an amazing time to be alive in the tech industry. All right. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that bell icon to get notified when a new episode is out. Or if you have an AI agent that can do that for you, have that AI agent do it for you. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button. If you didn't, send me an email and tell me why. Marcelo@icodewith.ai. So we will see you on the next episode. It won't be with Tim, but it'll be after that. We'll have another one with Tim. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers, everybody.